Welcome back to Study with Mew. This week we're answering the question, does music help or hurt your study focus? Let's dive in with an experiment. We've all had that moment where we're working hard on something important, like studying for an exam or trying to meet a deadline at work. But no matter how much effort we put in, we just can't seem to get into the zone. We feel distracted and unmotivated, and the work just isn't getting done. That's when some of us turn on music in order to get focused. But does it actually work? Well, today we're going to explore both sides of this question, looking at research on the effects of music on focus and productivity. And by the end of this video, you'll learn how to use music effectively to improve your study focus. So let's get started. The first thing we need to know is whether music actually improves focus. To answer this question, let's take a look at what happens in your brain when you listen to music. When you hear music, several areas of your brain light up. One of these is the auditory cortex, which is responsible for processing sound. Another one is the nucleus accumbens, which is involved in reward and motivation. Finally, there's the hippocampus, which plays a role in memory and learning. Now, when you listen to music that you enjoy, your brain releases a number of chemicals, such as dopamine and oxytocin, which are associated with pleasure and reward. However, researchers peg the release of these chemicals as a response to anticipation. Your brain learns to associate certain songs or pieces of music with past experiences and emotions. When you hear that music, your brain anticipates those past experiences and emotions and releases the corresponding chemicals. So how does this relate to studying? Well, researchers have found that listening to music while studying may actually hinder your ability to focus by hijacking your attention and triggering emotional and memory-related responses. For example, if you're listening to music with lyrics, your brain may be more likely to focus on the words of the song rather than the task at hand. On the other hand, instrumental music without lyrics may be less distracting because it doesn't trigger the same emotional and memory-related responses. Several studies have shown that music with lyrics is more distracting than instrumental music. When it comes to cognitive tasks like reading and problem solving, in one study, participants were asked to perform a number of cognitive tasks while listening to either music with lyrics or instrumental music. The results showed that participants were more accurate and faster on the tasks when they listened to instrumental music. So if you're planning to use music to help you study, it's best to stick with instrumental tracks without lyrics. Next, let's talk about the tempo or speed of the music. It's generally recommended to listen to music with a slower tempo when trying to focus or concentrate. Upbeat or fast-paced music can be more stimulating and distracting, making it harder to maintain focus. A study published in the Journal of Research in Music Psychology found that participants who listened to fast-paced music were less able to concentrate on a cognitive task compared to those who listened to slow-paced music. On the other hand, slower-paced music can create a calm and relaxed atmosphere that promotes focus and concentration. So if you're looking for music to help you study, try to find tracks with a slower tempo and avoid songs with sudden changes in speed or volume. Personally, I love lo-fi music when I'm studying. Lo-fi or low-fidelity music is a genre of music that is characterized by its focus on creating a relaxed and atmospheric sound. It's often instrumental and features a slower tempo. It's making it ideal for creating a calm and focused environment for studying. You can find many playlists of lo-fi music online. Another important factor to consider is how familiar you are with the music you're listening to. Researchers peg this as something called the familiarity principle, or the mere exposure effect. Essentially, our brains prefer things that we're more familiar with. So if you're trying to focus on a task, your brain may find it easier to do so when you're re-listening to music that you're familiar with. It's because your brain has already processed that information before, so it's less likely to be distracted by new or unfamiliar sounds. There are two ways you can use this principle to your advantage. First, you can stick with music you already know and love. Or second, you can listen to the same playlist for every study session. Both options can help your brain associate the music with focus mode. The second option is actually what I personally do. Every time I sit down to study, I put on my trusty Focus To-Do playlist, which has been with me through thick and thin since college days. I'm so used to it now that the music helps me get into a flow state almost immediately. Now that we've covered the basics of using music to focus, let's move on to the types of music that are most effective for studying. As we mentioned earlier, it's best to avoid music with lyrics when trying to focus, but there are still plenty of options available. Classical music is a great place to start, as it's been shown to promote relaxation and focus. One study found that listening to Mozart's Symphony No. 40 in G minor improved participants' spatial reasoning abilities, which are important for tasks like problem solving. Ambient music is another good option, as it's designed to create a relaxing and atmospheric soundscape. This genre often uses long, drawn-out notes and subtle changes in sound, which can help you focus on your work without being distracted. Video game soundtracks are also worth considering, as they're often rich in orchestral and electronic instrumentation. Plus, video game music is specifically designed to be immersive and engaging, which can help you get into a flow state. A study published in the Journal of Media Psychology found that video game music could enhance players' cognitive performance on a number of tasks, including memory and attention. Finally, let's talk about the volume of the music. It's important to keep the volume low enough that it doesn't become a distraction itself. According to research, background music should be at a low volume in order to be helpful. If it's too loud, it can actually be more distracting than helpful. I think that makes sense, right? If you're constantly trying to figure out what the music is playing, or if the music is too loud, it's going to be hard for you to focus on your studies. Personally, I always set my music volume to about 25% when I'm studying. I want it to be there as a nice background element, but not so loud that it's dominating my mental space. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information in this video, so let's recap quickly. Music can be a useful tool to help you focus while studying, but it's important to use it wisely. Here are 5 key takeaways from this video. First, lyrics distract you, so stick to instrumental music. Second, slower tempo helps with focus and concentration. Third, familiarity can help you focus better. So stick with music you know well, or create a dedicated focus playlist. Fourth, classical, ambient, and video game music are great options for studying. And fifth, keep the volume low so that it's not a distraction itself. Hopefully this video gave you some insights on how to use music to your advantage when studying. Remember, everyone is different, and what works for one person may not work for another. So don't be afraid to experiment and find what works best for you. If you're curious about how to boost your focus and productivity even more, check out this video next. Thank you for watching, and see you soon. Bye guys. Welcome back to Study with Mew. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know that I love talking about productivity tips and tricks that have been working well for me in university. So I thought, why not make a video about something that has been making a big difference to my studying recently? But it's super simple and doesn't really seem like it should work, but it does, and it makes all the difference. And this is all thanks to an article by Dr. James Clear called Why We Get Better at Focusing When We Breathe Slower, which I will link down below if you want to check it out. Without further ado, the trick is to simply take 3 deep breaths before you start your study session. Let me explain what I mean by this and how I do it. So what I used to do is pretty much just grab my laptop or my notebooks and just immediately get started with my work. But since I started taking these 3 breaths before starting my work, it has made such a huge difference. For me, I'll usually sit down at my desk and open up my laptop, and then I remember to take those 3 breaths. I don't do anything else. I don't do any sort of affirmations or try and clear my mind or anything like that. I just take 3 deep breaths and then get to work. I am not entirely sure how long each breath should be, or how long the pause should be in between each breath. I kind of just do it until I feel focused enough to get started on my work. It's not a very long process, but I would say that it's just a couple of minutes. Okay, so why does this actually work? Well, there are a few reasons. First one is that our brains evolved to detect threats. This means that if we're feeling a bit stressed or overwhelmed, our brain will naturally move into fight or flight mode, which will increase our heart rate and breathing in order to prepare us to either face the threat or run away from it. However, when we are faced with a situation where we need to focus, like when we're sitting down to do some work, our brain will also try and help us by moving us into a calmer state. And this is achieved by slowing our breathing down and relaxing our body. The second reason is that we have the ability to influence our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems by changing our breathing patterns. Our sympathetic nervous system is responsible for preparing us for action, aka the fight or flight response that I mentioned before. And our parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for calming us down, When we speed up our breathing, we stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. And when we slow down our breathing, we stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is why taking these slower, deeper breaths is helping us to calm down and focus. And the third reason is that when we slow down our breathing, it helps us to use our prefrontal cortex more. This is the part of the brain that is responsible for things like decision-making, attention, and social behavior. And when this part of the brain is engaged, we are able to think more clearly and focus better. So this is the science behind why this works. But let me tell you how it has been making a difference to my studying. Like I said before, I used to just dive right into my work. As soon as I sat down at my desk, I would open my laptop and get started on my notes or my problem set. And while I did have good intentions and wanted to be productive, I often found myself feeling rushed and overwhelmed. I felt like I needed to get as much done as possible in a short amount of time, which ended up making me feel more stressed and less productive. Plus, I was also getting worse grades than I wanted to. However, once I started incorporating these 3 breaths before every study session, it completely changed the way I approach my studying. First of all, I found that I was able to focus better. Instead of feeling overwhelmed and distracted, I found that taking those few moments to calm down and center myself allowed me to focus better on the task at hand. This meant that I was able to get more done in less time, and I was also able to retain more information. Another benefit that I noticed was that I was less stressed when I was studying. I found that by slowing down my breathing and relaxing my body, I was able to reduce my stress levels and feel more relaxed when I was studying. This made me enjoy studying more, and I was able to stay focused for longer periods of time. I also found that my grades started to improve once I started taking these breaths before every study session. I don't want to say that taking these breaths directly improved my grades, but I feel like it had an indirect impact on it, because I was focusing better, retaining more information, and feeling less stressed when I was studying. And all of these things obviously contribute to better grades. So overall, I would definitely recommend giving this a try. It's super easy to do and takes only a couple of minutes, but it can make a huge difference to your focus and productivity. You might need to practice it a bit to get it right, but once you do, it can become a helpful addition to your study routine. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do and forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.